Hello, everyone. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for joining me in that spirit while I'm thinking of it. I hope all of you are well as you're watching this. If any of you are struggling with your health or you have a close relative or loved one who is struggling, go ahead and let me know in the comments so that I can have their name and focus on them while I do Daimoku. So that if I can send any kind of positive energy your way or their way or all of you, I want to offer you that. That's up to you. And actually, as I think of that, I'm going to try to get through the letter from Sado today. Not that that's an exigent thing to finish, but I think depends on how much I blah, blah, blah in the process. But I did want to start out by saying that one of the things I've noticed, and I don't know why particularly in this Go Show, as this is a Go Show as I described in part one, that Nichiren wrote from his exile on Sado Island. And so there's a certain amount of exigency in it to help his surrogates on the mainland not only practice Buddhism, but to follow his doctrine and the correct teachings, as it were, of Buddhism, but also as they're his surrogates in that they're teaching not only other monks, but lay believers, and as you understand today, anyone who practices Buddhism and goes through this learning curve and study is performing the activities of a monk. So we are all monks in this day and age. But at that time, there were a lot of segregations, lay believers, for instance, and so forth. So suffice it to say that there was a tremendous amount of, again, exigency on Nichiren's part to represent the teachings, his doctrine, and to be very scholarly and to set up, very strong parameters as to how to practice, especially since there were competing schools of thought in his day that were approaching his followers, and himself being exiled is an example that could shake the confidence and bring up doubts in those who chose to follow Nichiren's doctrine. So there's all that kind of tension and exigency in his letter writing to these people. Also, it was hard to get this information to the mainland from Sado, so there wasn't much for him to transcribe his thoughts on. There weren't very many trips back and forth by either letter carriers or fellow monks or lay believers that could make the trip out there to see him and then bring with them letters and distribute them. So he makes mention of that in a kind of a postscript to this letter. And the main thing I wanted to get to is that it was kind of it was really noticeable to me as I read this Go Show that even in the midst of all of this stressful situation for him to disseminate doctrine and make sure that his guidance was available, that he takes a moment to be self-effacing. And this is a consistency that I don't think we talk about enough with Nichiren, is that he uses his own life as example. I mean, like all of Buddhist scholarship, there's countless stories, fables. Some of them are taken from real history. Some of them are obviously created to illustrate a point. As I've said before, they're mental exercises to get us to search our experience, our human mind, and find analogies that we can use to help us develop our own path to our Buddha nature, right? But in doing so, he slips in, and he's not self-effacing in that he lays himself bare. But you'll see, I'll point it out, where he uses examples of his own life, sometimes quite to his possible detriment. But he does so to illustrate that even if you've gone to this place, I've been there too. And that's very inclusive. That's very compassionate of him, especially in that day and age. So anyway, without further blah, 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 let's get into the remainder of Letter from Sado. So, he continues, my sufferings, however, are not ascribable to this causal law. In the past, I despised the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. What? I also ridiculed the sutra itself. Wow. Sometimes with exaggerated praise and other times with contempt. That sutra as magnificent as two moons shining side by side, two stars conjoined, one Mount Hua placed atop another, or two jewels combined. This is why I've experienced the aforementioned 8 kinds of suffering. Usually these sufferings appear one at a time on the boundless future, into the boundless future, but Nichiren has denounced the enemies of the Lotus Sutra so severely that all 8 have descended at once. So I'm going to stop there real quick because this is that self-effacing moment I want to point to. He's talking about him despising the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, ridiculing the sutra itself. I'm brought to his history as a youth, ages 10 through 12, when at the age of 12, a decision had to be made in the household whether he was going to continue helping his father, the fisherman, work his trade, or whether he was going to go off into a scholarly path to study at a local Buddhist temple and learn how to be a Buddhist monk. The story, as you can research for yourself, he travels all over Japan and into China and learns many different schools of thought in Buddhism. And so he exposes himself at a very young age to all of these different schools of Buddhism, and has to come to his own realization as to which teachings are authentic and which are deviations, and so on and so forth. So he is an example in his own life of what you and I do as we study Buddhism and occasionally think this is outlandish, or this makes sense but this doesn't, or we laugh at some of the stories and we ridicule them, or those who come to teach us from their life perspective. And, we're all limited in some respect, right? And we all make ourselves vulnerable as we talk to one another. And somebody who's challenged by something that you might bring up in Buddhism might start to ridicule you. And that's a votary of the Lotus Sutra that's being ridiculed, right? So what he's saying in essence is, look, all the struggles that you go through are my struggles as well. I didn't come to be Nichiren, this teacher with these doctrines, by eating a Spam sandwich one day and suddenly, I get it. It took a process of learning and having doubts and turning against and then rediscovering and then coming back to. What he is pointing to, though, is that we should be mindful of that because, those footprints leave a trace. And at some point, we have to clean that trace out. And so, our path to awakening and enlightenment isn't just this glorious choir up with a swell, right? We may get there. But we have to recognize that on the way to those that perfect choir, we may have to walk through a few mud puddles, right, of our own making. It's not from outside of us. We've planted this mud, right? But like the lotus itself, it rises from a muddy swamp. So this is part of the symbolism of Renge, right? So Nichiren, he slips this in there rather cleverly. For a moment, I thought when he said, I've been a slanderer, that I thought, ooh, Nichiren kind of taking a risk there. But then I understood immediately that what he was doing was relating to his own followers. As we go further into this Gosho, you'll understand why this is so important. So, without further ado, this is why I've experienced the aforementioned 8 kinds of suffering. Usually these sufferings come one at a time, blah, blah, blah. And this is like the case of a peasant heavily in debt to the steward of his village and to other authorities. As long as he remains in the village or district, rather than mercilessly hounding him, they are likely to defer his debts from one year to the next. I've experienced that in this life financially, but I think it's almost disappeared because they love them hounding, don't they? But when he tries to leave, they rush over and demand that he repay everything at once. Yeah, because if you're a debtor and you're in a place where everyone knows where you are, then they can just continuously kind of hammer at you occasionally with the promise that you'll come up with the money. But if you say, well, I'm leaving this place, I'm going somewhere else. Whoa, 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 whoa. I want all my stuff right now. I want all my debts paid right now because I don't know where you're going. I don't know how to track you, right? So this is what he's saying karmically. This is what the sutra means when it states, quote, it is due to the blessings obtained by protecting the law. So what does he mean there? He's saying that in order to get to that choir I was talking about earlier, you become a moving target if you focus on the law, on Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. All of your obstacles that you've placed in your own way in the past, though they may have been out of ignorance, and intent plays a big role in here. If your intent was not so vehement, then you'll be able to expiate that karma rather easily or quickly. You may not even confront it. But if you were really, really entrenched in perverse views, you're going to have to revisit that to clear it out, right? So this is a truth of practicing Buddhism and just self purification that is sometimes really scary to people who don't understand it. As we practice Buddhism, sometimes I know people who've halted their practice because of it. It's just, man, the more I chanted, the more crap came along in my life, and I just didn't want to deal with it. Well, you said it yourself. You quit. You quit because the nature of, see, there's a misunderstanding that the crap that's befalling you because you're so determined in your practice is coming from somewhere else. It's there all the time. You're just not aware of it. By practicing assiduously, you're raising it up so you can see it. It's not new. It doesn't come and impale you. It's been there all along. You just haven't seen it. Now, this is the real benefit of really determined practice. Is sometimes crap will become obvious to you, and you can't let it scare you. In fact, you should embrace it, laugh at it, go, God, I can't believe I did that to myself. And you'll expiate it that much faster. But you will need to take a quick look at it. If you let it bury you, then you're just going to end up stuck there. And this would be what, in terms of Buddhism, would be the hell of incessant suffering. Because you're just going to hang on to that crud, I'll say. and you won't move past it. So this is it's been called many things in different schools, but this is the nature of the struggle to attain our Buddha mind, our Buddha nature, right? Okay. Um, the Lotus Sutra says, there will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us, will attack us with swords and staves, with rocks and tiles. They will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, and householders, as well as other monks, slandering and speaking ill of us. Again and again, we will be banished, end quote. So, again, it's kind of foreboding, okay, but you'll understand why he's taking this dramatic tact. And this is all, he's quoting the sutras, so he's not making it up. If the offenders are not tormented by the wardens of hell, they will never be able to pay for their offenses and escape from hell. So this is kind of what I was saying earlier. Until you face it, you're just going to hang on to it, and it's going to be your obstacle. Were it not for the rulers and ministers who now persecute me, I would be unable to expiate my past sins of slandering the correct teaching. So there it is. So he's finding a way to look at these people who are persecuting him as validation that he's practicing correctly, because these obstacles are of his own making. And so they're basically showing him his crud and their validation that he must be practicing correctly for them to be this strongly opposed to him. It's pretty courageous. As far as practicing. And, Nichiren was converting hundreds and hundreds of people. So he wasn't just some quiet little monk practicing in a corner and people got curious about him. He was very vocal about correcting the doctrines of Buddhism in his day. So he brought down crud at the same level as he was pushing it. Nichiren is like Bodhisattva never disparaging of old, and the people of this day are like the four categories of Buddhists who disparaged and cursed him. So you can read about Bodhisattva never disparaging again in the Lotus Sutra. Though the people are different, and so, by the way, he's also pointing out that this is the meaning of that chapter in the Lotus Sutra. That Bodhisattva never disparaging wasn't some guy who did what the story tells. He's a mental exercise. He's a demonstration of how we create our own obstacles and how we have to undo them. Though the people are different, the cause is the same. Though different people kill their parents, they all fall into the same hell of incessant suffering. Since Nichiren is making the same cause as never disparaging, how could it be that he would not become a Buddha equal to Shakyamuni? So how could he be held back from attaining his Buddha nature, just as Shakyamuni did? Not to become him, not to become the Buddha, but to realize his Buddha nature, just like you and I are. To realize it. Finish my sentences. Moreover, those who now slander him are like Bharapala and the others who curse never disparaging. They will be tortured in the Avicii hell for 1,000 kalpas. I therefore pity them deeply and wonder what can be done for them. So, again, a demonstration of compassion. They're attacking me, but rather than wishing them ill, I see their function in my life. And I feel bad that they've involved themselves in this way because they're making such terrible causes. Not because I'm so great, Nichiren's so great, but because I've brought this upon myself and they're just playing in the game of my karma. And I don't want them to receive the pain, the suffering of these causes that they're having to make in order to demonstrate to me the karma that I am changing. It's kind of circular, huh? Those who belittled and cursed never disparaging acted that way at first, but later they took resolute mind of determination in his teachings and willingly became his followers. So this is because of compassion. These people who are making these terrible accusations, because they weren't really of their own doing that, they were responding to never disparaging. They were able, and through never disparaging's compassion, they were able to come around and see him as something of value. So this is the story of Buddhist compassion, right? The greater part of the fault of their slanderer was thus expiated, but even the small part that remained caused them to suffer as terribly as one who has killed one's parents 1,000 times. The people of this age refused to repent at all. Therefore, as the simile and parable chapter states, they must suffer in hell for countless numbers of kalpas. They may even suffer there for a duration of major world system dust particles kalpas, or of numberless major world systems dust particle kalpas. So there we go again with time. Time in Buddhism is a tool of instruction. Okay, and what he's saying here is not that those people will be in some Dante's Inferno, burning forever alive, endlessly. What he's saying is the nature of this kind of karmic function in the process of life is always there. There's always a negative aspect to things. There's always a pushback on forward movement. Otherwise, it wouldn't be forward movement. If there was never any pushback, you wouldn't perceive motion. Do you see? So, again, you have to remember, this is like a mental exercise. This isn't, try not to, I'm very visual, so I know for me, when I first read this kind of stuff, I saw the people suffering. I saw them burning in a cauldron forever, never extinguished and never burning out. I mean, it's horrifying, right? The visual. And it's used a lot in not just Buddhism, but most ancient literature, right? We're very colorful humans, so we can make images of pain, right? But when it gets to the point of major world systems dust particle kalpas, or numberless major world system dust particle kalpas, I mean, if you don't remember what that means, the example in Buddhism of time is to take an entire world system, the Earth, the solar system, say, for instance, and grind it all up into a powder, and then take each dust particle out of that powder and travel to another world system, another solar system, drop one particle of dust, and then keep moving until you used up all those particles of dust. And then you crush all of those world systems into dust. And then you start over again. At what point does your mind just unhook from reality? At what point do you tell yourself in your mind, this is uncalculable, this is immeasurable? These are the words of Buddhism, immeasurable, uncalculable, right? So this is about time. This is about making time irrelevant. Relevant as a force within the process of life, but not relevant as something to be distracted by in the reality of our personal life process. It's a force within life, and it's a force within our practice, and it's a force within all life. But it shouldn't be an impedance. It's just a realization that some things are just that. They indicate our own progress. So we can have compassion for that. Compassion for those who seem to slip into that spot. We don't want them to, but it's a force of nature. We experience it in ourselves, do we not? Okay. An Ashura contended that the Buddha taught only 18 elements, but that he himself expounded 19. The non-Buddhist teachers claimed that the Buddha offered only one way to enlightenment, but that they had 95. In the same way, the renegade disciples say, quote, though the priest Nichiren is our teacher, he is too forceful. We will spread the Lotus Sutra in a more peaceful way, end quote. In so asserting, they are being as ridiculous as fireflies laughing at the sun and moon, an anthill belittling Mount Hua, wells and brooks despising the rivers and oceans, or maybe a magpie mocking a phoenix. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So, pretty strong admonition while he's gone to just think, well, the teacher's away, they might as well play. Let's just go off and do our own thing. He's been exiled, so, obviously he's not doing it right. So we're going to do it right. Right? There's a lot of opportunity for that here. Logistically and truly. A lot of people would lose or their resolve. Right? So in an afterword here, he says, to Nichiren's disciples and lay supporters. So this is like an aside, because this was sent, like I said earlier, letter to Sado was sent to leaders, his surrogates on the mainland. So how are they going to distribute this, right? So then he has, there is very little writing paper here in the province of Sado, and to write to you individually would take too long. Nevertheless, if even one person fails to hear from me, it will cause resentment. He's very aware of how what he's built could fall apart. I mean, that's why he was exiled. That's why those powers that surround him and want him to shut up. That's what they're hoping. If we can't kill him, which they tried to do and it failed, maybe we can just get him out of here, and the fervor over his doctrine will just die out, and we can convert a bunch of people to our way of doing things. So he knows if resentment builds, things are going to fall apart. The Sangha will fall apart. Therefore, I want people with seeking minds to meet and read this letter together for encouragement. Oh, interesting. Meetings. When great trouble occurs in the world, minor troubles become insignificant. I do not know how accurate the reports reaching me are, but there must surely be intense grieving over those killed in recent battles. So it's a very tumultuous time. What has become of the lay priest Izawa and Sakabe? Send me news of Kawanobe, Yamashiro, Tokugyoji, and others. Also, please be kind enough to send me the essentials of government in the Chen-Quan era, the collection of tales from the non-Buddhist classics, and the record of the teachings transmitted within the 8 schools. Without these, I cannot even write letters. So, it's quite amazing. So he's telling the people to, page turning karma, he's telling the people to whom he's sending this letter. Don't just hog this for yourself. Share it. Get together with lay believers and lay priests and so on, and read it out loud. Read it with them. Take turns. Do a round table. Have everyone discuss this so that everyone gets the information directly from me. Don't try to interpret it. I mean, that's great normally when I'm around. But with me removed, share my words directly with everyone and have a discussion. And by the way, because I know I'm going to have to do this for a while now, I don't know how many years I'm going to be stuck out here, I want to write these kinds of letters to you to disseminate and have gatherings about that are meaty, that help you defend your practice against those that would alter, take you away, separate you from our Sangha. So send me these documents so that I can have some pertinent documents, some pertinent discussions about the kinds of doctrinal questions and responses that you'll need to be aware of from these other influences. Otherwise, otherwise I'm writing, thank you notes. It's not relevant to our situation. So I need this information. Please send it to me. Whew. It's pretty big shift. It makes me think, because I'm so visual, what would a series of movies maybe look like to follow the travails of Nichiren in the shogunate time in Japan. I wish I could talk to Kurosawa about creating this epic movie I have in my mind. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your great comments, too, all of you guys, and all you people, I should say, out there, guys and gals. It really, it's get emotional just thinking. It's so amazing to me that even separated from one another through this medium, through the internet, through videos, that we can have such personal dialogues about our practice. Truly amazing Buddhism is, and I can't even express how much it moves me that you'll even include me in your dialogue. It does so much for my practice, and if I can offer anything of value to those of you who comment and those of you who just read the comments or listen to these videos, please continue to challenge me and send me questions and give me opportunity to deepen evermore my practice. So thank you. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.